Thank you, everyone, for tuning in to the new Patriot Report. I'm your host, Bobby Bones, and I'm here to go over the latest economic numbers that just came out. And also, I'm going to go over the aggression that the Trump administration is putting forth against Venezuela. So let's get into it. 2 months ago, the U.S. Federal deficit had just hit $38 trillion. Okay. Well, we have already, in less than 2 months, added $500 billion to the debt. Okay. At this pace, we are adding $3 trillion in new debt per year. Right. And this is while the president is going out there saying how strong the economy is and how wonderful things are. And here's the thing that I want to really bring home to my listeners and viewers who are checking out this video and checking me out for the first time, or maybe you've been watching me this entire year. Strong economies and, pay down deficits, right? They don't add to the deficit. So that's the first problem that we have, okay? We are creating more new debt than ever before in history, while not, being in like a world war or COVID or something like this. This is without any disasters happening. Can you imagine what's going to happen when the economy finally fully melts down? We're officially in a recession, and because that's when deficits really explode. So if we're adding $500 billion in just 2 months. Can you imagine the amount of debt that the federal government is going to take in when the economy does melt down? Now, as I've been saying, if you really want to watch the dollar, you really have to watch the precious metals market. And the precious metals market has been telling the Fed and the federal government to stop what they're doing, right? Now, how did the precious mining stocks react to the job numbers and to what Powell said last week at the last Fed meeting? Well, since then, gold is up $168, landing at $4,527 per ounce, right? Now, I know I have a lot of listeners that have been following me on the internet for years. And, I have been telling my audience to buy gold back when it was $350 an ounce, right? Well, now it's at $4,500 an ounce, okay? So I understand there's going to be a lot of people who cannot afford to buy gold, right? But what you need to do if you can't afford gold is you need to buy silver, because silver had an amazing move since all of this. Silver is up 6%, over 6% on the week, cracking above $70 per ounce. It's actually at $70.31 per ounce. Again, if you're not on the silver train, you need to get on. This is the time to get on. Silver is now leading the way in the precious metals market. Also, another indicator and another way to protect your wealth from being destroyed by the federal government is to invest in the precious mining stocks. Now, how did the GDX respond? Well, the GDX is over 6% on the week, landing at $90.18 per share. The GDXJ is another precious mining stock, gold mining stock, also popped 6% on the week. Now is $120 per share. Okay, these are huge moves in the precious metals market. Barrick Gold. Barrick Gold is another one. Now, this is a stock, JP Morgan came out, all these analysts came out a year ago, said, don't buy this stock. This is a horrible stock, okay? They were calling a top literally 11 months ago when I started this program, and I was telling my listeners to buy it. Well, guess what? Barrick Gold popped 5% on the week and is now up $45.59 per ounce. And I believe has popped over 100% on the year. Okay, so if you had listened to me rather than the so-called know-it-all in the media, economist, you would have missed out on that trade. But those of you who have followed my trades, right, you guys are up dramatically. These stocks have beaten out Tesla. They've beaten out Nvidia, right? All the high flyers. These stocks have beaten them out. And I was the only guy out there that I know of that have been champion these stocks. Let's take a look at another stock, Pan American Silver. Pan American Silver now is up 9% on the week, landing at $53.74 an ounce. I mean, again, huge moves into precious mining stocks. And these stocks are telling the Federal Reserve to stop, okay? And just so my new viewers understand, when you buy a precious mining stock, right, you're not just buying the gold that's in the ground, but you're also buying the companies as well. So these are real companies that generate real profits. And as inflation goes up, the metal that they're extracting from the ground goes up as well. So again, the thing I have to stress the most is that it's not that the precious metals are going up, it's that the dollar is actually going down. Now, so anyway, over the past week, we just got the new jobs report from the non-farm payroll report. And the non-farm payroll report was looking for 40,000 jobs, okay? And it turns out that actually we had a beat on that. We had 64,000 jobs that they reported. Now, as an analyst, as an economist, as somebody who follows these numbers deeply, 40,000 seemed like a low number to, like that they put. It's a very low bar. So what I did was I went back and I wanted to see what the government was forecasting to hit last year. The same month, same everything. Last year, they were forecasting 58,000 jobs, right? So my point is, in giving you that information, is that the government keeps lowering the bar, okay? They're lowering the bar and they're hopping the hurdles, but the bar is much lower, right? So, but another perspective that we have to put into this, because even Powell stated in his last Fed funds meeting that the average revised numbers to the non-farm payroll is 60,000 jobs, right? So if we added 64,000 jobs, right, that's a push, okay? And I believe the revisions are going to be actually much more. And what tells me that? Well, the unemployment rate ticked up to 4.6% over the past, we're at a 4-year high, okay? And if you've been following my show, and then you understand that the way that they count the employed and the unemployed is completely different than how they used to count it 30, 40 years ago. So when it's 4.6%, you have to actually times that by three times. Okay, so it's probably around 12%, the real unemployment rate. But again, the way that they capture these numbers, they don't capture all the unemployed, right? Because if you've been unemployed for so long, then they stop counting you. Plus the way they count full-time workers, part-time workers, all of it is fugazi, as we used to say in Brooklyn. But Another indication that the economy is actually slowing down, and I have been saying over the past 8-9 months that we are actually we're in a stealth manufacturing recession, and the numbers are bearing that fruit because the manufacturing numbers dropped another 5,000 jobs just in the past print, and that's after losing 6,000 jobs in October. And mind you, we're losing all of these manufacturing jobs. And if you look deep into the data, we are actually pushing people from full-time jobs into part-time jobs. Okay, that's the trend that we're going in. And I want to also tackle real quick. Trump gave not a State of the Union, but a sort of like a national press conference last week. And I kind of went over it in my last video. And if you didn't see it, check out my last video. It was a banger. But anyway, Trump keeps going out there talking about how all of these companies and these countries, they're going to be investing $17 trillion into the economy, right? We just have to wait, right? It's coming. And, when you look into the numbers of $17 trillion, that actually equals 1/3 of our entire economy. Okay. First of all, these companies, right, and countries are not sitting on that much cash, right? That's first. Second of all, you would start to see a transformation of money being moved, groundbreaking factories, right? You would be seeing, literally industrial revolution style transformations in our economy. And the fact of the matter is, we are still bleeding manufacturing jobs, and the economy is clearly slowing down, but he still puts out that number, and like he was talking about drug prices and how they're going to go down 400, 500, 600%, which would mean that, what are they going to pay you to take their drugs? See, this is the nonsense of Trump. He always has these grandiose predictions and numbers, but even MAGA is not falling for it anymore. Like they see the writing on the wall. They see what the tariffs have done to the farmers and to prices, right? They see their pay slipping away every week through inflation, right? And they're walking away, and that's the truth. And look, I am somebody who came on 11 months ago when I first started this program, and I wish Trump well. I wanted him to succeed, but yes, I'm going to call out when I think he's doing the wrong thing. I don't believe in central planning, okay? I don't believe in protectionist policies. I believe in freedom and individual rights, right? I believe in free markets, okay? And what's killing us are the deficits. And at the rate that Trump is increasing the deficits, okay, that is more weight on the employee's back. That is more weight on business owners like me and you who own a business, right? That $500 billion that government just added, that's $500 billion more we got to lift, okay? So this is all unsustainable, right? So one last thing that I want to go over regarding the economic numbers that came out is that the CPI rose 0.2% over the past month. Now, if you remember what Trump said last week to the American people, he said that inflation is a hoax, that we don't have inflation. Well, the CPI came out and it rose 0.2% in the past month. Now, mind you, that beat the 0.3% that the analyst had out there, but if you extrapolate that over the year, that is still 2.5%. Year over year was 2.7%. So that's the inflation rate that Trump has had in his first year. Mind you, that is still well above the 2% target. Also, looking at core CPI equaled 2.6%. Okay, now mind you, now we are restarting QE, right? Now they are going to rev up the printer to buy treasuries, right? So we're going to create treasuries out of thin air. We're going to monetize more of the debt, right? So guess which way inflation is going to go. This is why you need to get out of dollars, okay? And you need to go into real assets. And the reason why the Fed is lying about, because again, they changed the name from QE, right? They don't call it QE, what they're doing. And the reason for that is because the Fed don't want to let out of the bag the real huge problems, systemic problems that we have in the economy. And I was looking at the 10-year Treasury. The 10-year Treasury is actually up over the week, okay? So what that means is that although the Fed now has lowered the nominal interest rate on the short end, long end rates are actually going to go way higher. So again, you want to protect yourself and protect your family and protect what you've worked for, and don't fall for the salesman, okay? He's trying to sell you something, okay? I'm not. I have nothing here to sell you but good information. And now I have a track record that people can look back on and see, hey, was Bobby Bones right? Did he give me good information over the year? And if anybody looks at all of the economic information that I have given, I don't want to brag, but I have been spot on. And this is why we need to subscribe, like, and share my content and help others navigate through what storm is coming in the future. Now I'm going to segue into what we're doing with Venezuela. Now, obviously with Trump, you can literally put together a program and he will just absolutely screw everything up because he's always doing something else to stay in the media and keep people distracted on so many things. And so I understand to my viewers and listeners that, look, there's a lot of issues going on right now. I started talking about our aggression with Venezuela, and so I'm going to stick with that. It doesn't mean I'm not going to cover like Epstein and all of this stuff, which came out, which is just, unbelievable. There what the Justice Department tried to do, but and let me state for the record, in case anybody is wondering. Look, hey, if they find that Bill Clinton did something illegal, lock him up, right? And I say that with Trump or anybody else. Again, I'm not partisan on those issues, but I want to kind of stay on task on what I've been reporting on. And right now, I'm going to go from the latest key economic numbers straight to what the Trump administration is doing in Venezuela. So I appreciate you, sticking along and checking this out. So what Americans have to understand is that foreign policy is directly connected to economic policy. Okay, they are actually tied together. A lot of Keynesian economists and people like that you watch on CNN or Fox News, they will tell you that the two are unrelated. A lot of the decoupling of the dollar and the huge moves in the precious mining stocks and precious mining's market is actually directly linked to our foreign policy. Now, one thing that has really bothered me over the past week is watching China and Russia coming together. But not just China and Russia, but also we are watching Brazil and Iran joining the fun with China and Russia. So all of this could have been avoided had our government taken a different posture against China and Russia. And this isn't just one party. This is actually both parties. This is, again, over 50 years of aggression we have been showing, Russia particularly. But then since Trump has taken the stage back 10 years ago, back in 2015 and 16, we have been showing horrible aggression towards China. See, instead of trying to beat China legit, right, what we're trying to do is handicap them. And we're doing this in several different ways because we can't compete fairly. So now we're going to cheat by doing things like tariffs or seizing the oil. So anyway, the Trump administration hasn't been satisfied with its trust me, bro, foreign policy of blowing up the little vessels in the Caribbean, because now they've graduated to seizing huge oil tankers, right? And the thing about it is that the last oil tanker was actually headed to Cuba. And I stated on my last episode, and if you didn't watch it, you need to go back and watch it, that, you know, stealing from the most poor of our, you know, on this side of the hemisphere or practically in the world, which are the Cuban people, first off, is not a tough move, right? Second, stealing is wrong. I believe it's God's top 10, and so is murder, right? And so, but anyway, I digress from that. But now this next tanker, because Trump just stole another tanker. Well, guess what? This tanker was actually purchased by China and was headed for China. And as you can imagine, the Chinese are pissed. I do have a question for the neocons who might be watching this episode, my show, or just in general, right? What happens the next time when the U.S. tries to seize a ship, or in this case, another oil tanker, only next time there are 20 to 40 Russian troops on that ship defending their property? Okay? What are you going to do if there are 20 or 30 Russians on a ship with long guns protecting their property? Are you willing to send your kids into World War III? Because I can clearly see the escalation going that way, right? And I could also see an accident happening, right? Where our troops get killed on accident, or we kill other people on accident, right? So are you going to sign up your children, right? Are you going to fight yourself, right? Because I see a lot of tough guys out there. It's people like Sean Hannity who never served and others, right? It's so easy, Trump too, you know, it's so easy to send other people's children to fight your battles. Why don't you try and fight them yourself? Why don't you pay for them, right? You didn't pay for the last 7 wars, right? And you put that on the credit card, and you've saddled the children and grandchildren with endless debt, which is actually part of the reason why we can't compete with China, right? But now you're heading towards more war, right? So anyway, I want to play this first clip. This is from Kristi Noem, and just follow along, okay? U.S. Coast Guard boards tanker carrying Venezuelan oil. Kristi Noem, the Homeland Secretary, said a vessel had been apprehended. It was the second action this month against a tanker carrying Venezuelan oil. But the vessel boarded on Saturday, called the Centuries, is not on a list of entities under the U.S. sanctions that is publicly maintained by the Treasury Department. The people inside Venezuela's oil industry said the cargo belongs to an established China-based oil trader with a history of taking Venezuelan crude oil to Chinese refineries. The ship had recently left Venezuela and was in the Caribbean waters. Now I'm going to play another clip, and this clip is actually from Zero Hedge, and just follow along. Beijing condemns Trump's gunboat diplomacy after China-bound tanker seizure. Beijing has condemned the U.S. interception of sanctioned crude tankers off the Venezuelan coast after a Chinese-bound oil tanker was seized on Saturday. Beijing has the right to conduct trade with other countries. Reuters cited China's foreign ministry spokesman Lin Jing at a regular press briefing, who said the U.S. seizure of another country's tanker was a serious violation of international law. Jing added that China opposes all unilateral and illegal sanctions. That is an important point. You can't just sanction ships on your own and seize them. Actually, for a sanction to be carried out, you have to go through the UN, and it has to be accepted. You can't just unilaterally proclaim a sanction. And, another thing that the Trump administration is doing, and it's not just the Trump administration, both parties have been showing aggression around the world over the past 50 years. And one way that America shows aggression around the world is by our modern day weaponry. It is a real threat to other countries. As a matter of fact, Trump just came out announcing the new Trump naval fleet. This is going to be the most powerful and strong Navy anywhere in the world, most lethal. And, this is not exactly telling the rest of the world, hey, we want to do business with you. What this is telling the rest of the world is to fear us, right? And again, it's our posturing to the rest of the world why the world needs to drop the dollar. But I digress. Because it's the dollar's reserve currency that allows us to spend money that we don't have. Now, the thing to understand is that with every action Trump has taken against China, China has responded with swift reaction. And one of those, and a few of those reactions was China restricting rare earth materials from us. And if you've been following my show, I went over this a few months ago. Because rare earths, there are some rare earths that only China has. And those rare earths power things like CAT scans, X-ray machines, things that everyday Americans need, right? And this is why trade is good, right? Because it allows countries to receive products and resources that they might not otherwise have, right? Like, let's take Japan, for instance. Japan doesn't have any oil, right? It's got to import all of its oil. And because of trade, Japan can have affordable oil, right? Well, it's the same thing with America, right? We right now are seeing oil prices go down. Why? Because we trade with OPEC and Iran. And Iran, after being bombed into the Stone Ages over the past 20 years because of bad foreign policy, their oil pipelines have just been restored. Guess what? Now we get the benefit of that cheaper oil. Not only did China react against us with rare earth materials, prohibiting us from them, but then they also stopped buying our agricultural products, right? Remember, Trump went out there. He said, hey, he campaigned, I'm going to put, all these tariffs on China. I'm going to force them to buy our soybeans and our beef and other agricultural products. And what did China do? China said, screw you. Other countries can make soybeans and stuff. They went to Brazil. They went to Argentina, right? They went to other countries that aren't showing them aggression. Now, what do we have? We have farmers with their livestock and livelihoods being destroyed, right, because of bad central planning policies, right, because of bad aggression policies, right? So there is a direct economic link from foreign policy to economic policies, right? And that's just a couple of ways that our foreign policy can have unintended consequences with economic policies. And unfortunately, I'm here to report that this thing with Venezuela is actually getting much worse. And while Trump is doing that, he just also said that he wants to take over Greenland still. So, I mean, the anti-war president is not that anti-war. And the thing that really upsets me or the MAGA supporters, the few that are still there. Now, mind you, I mean, he's down to Herbert Hoover level polling. You know, don't believe the BS polling that the White House is putting out, because that's, you know, those are inside paid polling, right? If you look at real polls, right, Trump is way down. And the reason is because he's losing the America First crowd who was against foreign intervention, regime change wars, right? We wanted to take care of America first and Americans first, and we're not getting that from these policies. He's actually causing more damage than good. And another thing to contemplate is, how are we going to pay for all of these wars? Who's going to finance these wars? Because China has been a big financer of ours, especially during the Iraq war, Afghanistan wars, right? China was one of the biggest bondholders, right? Without China, who is going to finance these wars? You think China's going to finance a war against them, right? It's completely ludicrous. It's completely ridiculous. And again, we haven't even paid for the last 7 wars that we had in the past. And now you're going to try and put another war on the credit cards and saddle your children and grandchildren with more endless debt. And mind you, as I reported earlier, you know, we added $500 billion in just 2 months, and that's without war, right? So can you imagine the amount of debt that we are going to accumulate going into war? Okay, this is unsustainable and reckless. And I want you to check out Trump's attitude relating to the Constitution. Okay, so I want to play this clip, and I want you to see exactly Trump's attitude about this whole thing. And I'll give my comments and opinions about it after the clip. Check this out.
Mr. President, if you are declaring war against these cartels and Congress is likely to approve of that process, why not just ask for a declaration of war?
Well, I don't think we're going to necessarily ask for a declaration of war. I think we're just going to kill people that are bringing drugs into our country. Okay? We're going to kill them. You know, they're going to be like dead. Okay.
See, now I understand what Trump, you know, Trump has a thing where he's got to come off strong, you know, oh, they're going to be dead, you know. And again, it's not just Trump. You know, Barack Obama did not ask Congress. Bush did not ask Congress. Bill Clinton did not ask Congress. Ronald Reagan did not ask Congress. I am not, all the way back to Richard Nixon, did not ask Congress for a declaration of war. Yet, tens of thousands of our fellow brothers and sisters have been mutilated and killed. We have lost endless treasure fighting wars without Congress voting on it, which is demanded by the Constitution, right? And look at his attitude towards it. I mean, he has such an attitude when he talks about it. And, you know, I get it. Like, you know, like this is to like try and get back the young males who are leaving him in droves. But the young males are not impressed by Trump acting like this. They're actually walking away from him. It is not strong. I made this argument in my last video. You are not strong picking on the weakest of people, right? What is strong is what Jesus had taught us. And I'm talking to my Christian friends especially. You wash the feet of the peasants, right? You help those in need, right? That is showing true strength, right? Going out there and stealing from the poorest and murdering people without just due process. That is very weak. So I don't care how much of an attitude that Trump plays, how tough he thinks he is. This is not tough. It is weak and pathetic. And I come on the record. I'm completely against all of these war games that this administration is pulling right now. Now, I'm going to play the next clip. Play clip 4. There's the 4th clip. I'm going to play it, and we'll be right back in a second. Give me one moment. China slams U.S. seizure of Venezuelan oil tanker headed for China. Calls it international piracy. Beijing is furious, and this time it's not subtle. China says the U.S. interception of a China-bound tanker off Venezuela's coast is a serious violation of international law. The ship carrying roughly 1.8 million barrels of Venezuelan crude was stopped in international waters days after Trump announced a de facto blockade on sanctioned Venezuelan oil. Okay, let's play this next clip. Washington's defense: the tanker was falsely flagged, part of Venezuela's shadow fleet, and carrying sanctioned crude. Case closed. China's response: Venezuela has the right to trade. Unilateral U.S. sanctions don't rewrite maritime law. Full stop. Zoom out. This isn't about one ship. It's about president. The U.S. is now enforcing sanctions physically at sea against cargo destined for the world's second largest economy. Now, mind you, this is all happening right after Trump pardoned the former president of Honduras, who was found guilty of transporting one of the largest shipments of cocaine in history to the U.S., right? You know, this reminds me of our troops in Afghanistan protecting the poppy fields, right? While at the same time fighting the drug war at home, arresting the users of that drugs at home, while our troops were actively protecting the very fields that made the heroin and the illicit drugs, right? So again, Trump is not the first administration to pull this nonsense, and I guarantee he won't be the last. But this is so flagrant what's happening right now. And so anyway, if you're wondering why China is in our backyard buying Venezuelan oil, that is part of the unintended consequences of our foreign policy over the past 20 years towards Venezuela, or ever since George Bush came out with the axis of evil and proclaimed that Venezuela is part of the axis of evil, which I never understood back then. I always thought that was complete nonsense. But let me play this last clip, and I'll be right back in 1 second. Venezuela replaces U.S. oil giants with Chinese and Argentina firms, right? So after U.S. sanctions forced out Western oil companies in May, Venezuela signed at least 9 deals with foreign firms, including major Chinese and Argentina companies, right? So you see what's happened is that, you know, this is where foreign policy directly affects economic results, because wouldn't it make more sense for Americans to be refining that crude oil rather than Chinese? I mean, they're going to make it anyway, right? And we can do that without conquering a country. Matter of fact, we used to produce their oil, right? Now we just steal it. So you tell me what's a better policy? To trade with Venezuela and hire, they can work, our Americans can work, right? Right now, that last ship, as I reported, that we stole, the first one that was going to Cuba, is right now in Galveston unloading, right? Wouldn't it make more sense to hire Americans, right, to refine Venezuelan crude as well, right? This is what I'm talking about. This is what is hurting us economically. It's hurting the dollar on the world stage, because you got to think, I need my listeners and viewers, especially people who have not been watching me for that long, or my new subscribers, that the reason why the world has to leave the dollar, right, is because no country should have this type of power over another country or over the world, right? It's because of the reserve currency that allows our government to go out there, borrow a bunch of money, print up a bunch of money, build this massive military up, right? Which then we use to then threaten the same people who have been loaning us the money and trading with us, right? Giving us the things that we either can't build or produce, or that they produce more efficiently, right? And so from a free market perspective, from a capitalist perspective, or just from an American constitutional perspective, these type of interventionist policies have real economic consequences and affect the economy directly. And I would rather Americans refining all of that oil, those millions of barrels of oil, versus China. And at the same time, you would keep China and Russia from coming together. Now they have to come together, right? And this is the problem with this stuff. This is why the dollar is getting, this is part of the reason. This is just one part of a reason why the dollar is getting destroyed, and why you need to invest in gold, precious metals, and mining stocks. And not just that, but if you are an investor, you need to also buy futures in industrial metals as well. Because again, as the world moves away from the dollar, they're going to move back to gold. They're going to move back to precious metals. And right now we are seeing that. That's why BRICS has been created, right? And we are pushing people who should be doing business with America with everyone else, right? We are pushing these people out. And I can guarantee you that not only are, and again, Trump did not start this, but he is just adding to it. The economic numbers that we get are completely bogus, okay? And when Trump throws out there these massive economic numbers, 17 trillion are going to come back to the U.S., I promise you that is not going to happen, okay? And this is wrong. It is unconstitutional, and I am on the record stating I am not for it, right? I am for freedom. I am for liberty, right? I want to trade with my partners, right? I want sound money, right? I don't want the government stealing my labor, okay? And then they want to give me a little bit back, right? It's like, when the government steals your money and then wants to give you a bailout or give you some money back, it's like giving yourself a transfusion and spilling blood in the middle of the two, right? It's like I'm pulling blood from this arm and putting it in this arm, and in the middle, you are spilling blood, right? How about you don't steal from me and you let me decide what's best for me, right? And unless you yourself are going to serve, or you yourself are going to put your own children up at the front line, right? Maybe you should rethink these policies that have failed over the past 5 decades. So anyway, I wanted to put this video out. This is my last video of the year. Okay, I want to wish everybody a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year. My next video will actually be on January 8th. That is the first Thursday after the 1st. And unless something really big happens, I mean, it's got to be really massive. If we go to war with China, like directly or something like this, I'll probably jump on and make a quick video. But for the most part, I'm off the next couple of weeks. I really have put a lot of work into these videos and updating some things. And if you've been a viewer of mine since the beginning, You've seen the changes. And I want to first thank my viewers and listeners who have been with me since the beginning. The next time I'm on will be my 1-year anniversary. And I just want to thank those of you who have stuck with me and those of you who have given me a chance and have taken the time to listen to me and see what I have been able to produce over the past year. And now I hope I have built some good credibility with you, ladies and gentlemen. And so I thank you, and I want to wish everybody wonderful holidays, Merry Christmas, and of course a Happy New Year's. And I'm thankful for you, patriots, and I promise to always stand up for liberty, freedom, and of course sound economic policies. Stay strong, take care, and I'll see you on the next one.